Wow. Oh,
Yeah.
man, I'm loving this already. Cool. Just give me about 1 minute. I'm just going to make sure that all of these signals are on and we're not being limited by the views. Want to make sure everything is public. Okay. We are on public. 1 second. Thank you all for logging in. Just go ahead, type your name in the chat. Let me know where you're logging in from. All right. Bishop, do you see it on your page or do?
I mean, I see it on your page. I see it. I'm watching Facebook now.
So you can share it from there. Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you all for logging in. Go ahead and share this conversation tonight. I have my good brother on with me, the bishop, the author, the pastor. We both serve as former international youth presidents.
Yes.
Which I had the opportunity to meet him several years ago, where he came to visit our congregation, where at the time, a good friend of mine, friend of his, was speaking and sharing with us. So he stopped by and we had the opportunity to connect. And I thank God for the relationship. Babe, thanks for logging in. Thanks for logging in. For those who are logging in, go ahead and share this conversation. I am on tonight with Bishop Travis from Virginia.
Yes.
From Virginia. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and share this on YouTube. Thank you all for logging in tonight. Man, I am so looking forward to this conversation. So much sauce, so much spice. I mean, to discuss, and I believe it's going to be a blessing to the body of Christ. And what I want you guys to do, and I'm going to reiterate this throughout the conversation. When we get off of this live, I want you to hit Bishop Travis up. I want you to hit him up for his services to get on the right path. We have an opportunity here to make a difference, make some changes within our ministry, set things up for our ministry to last beyond the pastor's life, but also strengthen the family. The family doesn't have to struggle if you set things up right. The ministry doesn't have to struggle if you set things up right. And so we're going to talk about it tonight. Again. Thank you all for logging in. Greatly appreciate you guys. We're going to get started. And so tonight, I have with me tonight, he is two-time author. He really writes some good stuff. Listen, when you get a chance, I want you to go to Amazon or go to his website, and I want you to purchase one book. One of the books I want you to purchase is Don't Eat the Baby. Mm-hmm. The Characteristics of a Cannibalistic Church. My God. I mean, just the title alone is very enticing. You wanna find out what is he talking about in this book and how it relates, how he takes that title and relates it to the church. The second book that we're going to focus on tonight, though, is one that I believe is very critical and important to the body of Christ. And the one thing I appreciate is he understands the importance of his impact in ministry as well as outside of the ministry, because he's not just a pastor, he's not just a father, he's not just a husband, but he is also a professor and he is also a lawyer. He is also a professor and he is also a lawyer. He teaches at Hampton University. Some may argue the real HU. I don't know if it's Howard. I don't know if it's Hampton.
I graduated from the other one, so I'm
so you got. Oh, so you HU squared.
Yes, one gave me an education, one gave me a job. So
come on, man. That's it.
Except for when they play football, basketball, I just keep quiet.
You just keep quiet. but he hails from the state of Virginia, Martinsville area. But he wrote this book, guys, and it's called Where Will the Mantle Fall? And it is a biblical and legal guide to succession planning. Bishop, I just want to give you a few moments to just say hello to everybody and greet everybody, and then we'll get into this conversation tonight.
Well, hey, praise the Lord. Thank you, Pastor Moody, for this awesome opportunity to share and to serve. As I shared behind stage, the book was released in September, and this is the first interview I've done about the book. So I'm thank you for sharing your platform with us. And if anybody in my family or friends are watching, please like, share, comment on this broadcast tonight. I was looking down because I was trying to share it on all the different pages and platforms. And just thank you tonight for taking time out of your schedule to allow me to be on your program tonight. I've watched your program with some of your other guests, so I'm honored to be one of your guests tonight.
Well, Bishop, I think this topic is something that cannot be overlooked, especially coming out of 2020 when so many churches lost their leaders.
Right.
And so many leaders did not have paperwork, processes, or succession in place.
Right.
So this conversation is something that needs to be had, not just now, but even moving forward and probably yearly, right? Because there are thousands of churches. And I mean, the reality is with as many churches that close, we could probably help some not to close if they have the right information.
Absolutely.
They could probably keep going because some of the things, that hinders ministries from continuing on is poor planning or no planning.
Right.
And then not having the right planning.
Right.
So, this conversation, man, is really important, and I'm ready to dive in, man. So tell us what inspired the book.
Wow. It's amazing how God does things. I did the presentation at a conference about 12 years ago, and I sat on it, and this was my first summer free not being youth president. So I served as youth president for 12 years. It's kind of like, okay, what are you going to do with yourself this summer? You're so used to kind of planning. And I said, I think it's time to finally release this book. In the book, I mentioned about a personal story, a very dear bishop who took ill very quickly. From I think October to January, learned he had cancer and passed away in January. And I remember being invited to his home on his sick bed, trying to craft a succession plan. His mind was good. Yes, to show you the timing, I went home Christmas to talk with him. Around New Year's weekend, he was in the hospital. We signed the documents in the hospital. He passed away the following week.
Wow.
I mean, cutting it close is an understatement, but in retrospect, he was somewhat fortunate, if I can dare say, because he knew, his time was coming to an end and he needed to put something in place. Whereas you find too oftentimes things happen unexpected.
Right.
Nothing is in place.
Right.
And so with him, he didn't necessarily he had somebody in mind, but in the end, we put together a process. And then the process ultimately led to the person who he wanted to be in a position. And that's been, I think, 12 years later, and the church is doing well. But just let you know that, sometimes I get called in and we share with these pastors and they want to put some things in place and we're procrastinators. And so people have things in mind. They may have shared it with their spouse, but it's not documented. And so we're trying to help people to not just have it in their mind, share it with the spouse, but let's try to formalize this in a way that kind of everybody knows, reading from the same script, kind of what the plan is. Because we've seen, on the other hand, churches that have split, have completely basically fallen apart.
Yeah.
People have scattered, backslid, all because the leader fell asleep and there was no one in place to keep the ministry going.
Wow, man, that is good, man. And again, I'm so glad that you wrote this book. And so I want to take a few moments to go through some of the chapters in the book, because again, the chapters were very intriguing, and I love the way that you were able to reference scripture uh, for this book to help add some um, I call it sauce, but add some content, add some strong content to give examples
Right.
for people to see and for people to read. So you talk about appointing a protege, appointing a protege. You use the story of Elijah and Elisha. So I'm going to ask you, what should leaders look for in individuals that I'm sorry, you use Moses and Joshua in this one.
Right.
What should leaders be looking for in the individuals that will be taking their place?
And you mentioned Elijah and Elisha, you mentioned Moses and Joshua. I think those different relationships shows that there isn't a perfect relationship. Each one
Yeah,
of them kind of have its own dynamics. When you look at Moses and Joshua, um, Joshua was willing to defend and protect, basically do anything he could to guard Moses. I mean, he stood between Moses and the people while Moses went up to the mountain. When at the tent of meeting, he stood out there when Moses would go into the tent to meet with God. When the spies came back and they were ready to kill Moses for showing them the land of Canaan and them not thinking that they were capable of entering, it was Joshua that kept the people from killing Moses. So when you look at in terms of a loyal, assistant that got your back,
yeah,
that follows instructions, that's not trying to undermine you, undercut you, and was successful, one of integrity, I think that's an example that Joshua gives us.
yeah. That's good. That's good. And I think that's something people should be aware of, because some people have different motives
Right.
behind why they choose a certain person, and we'll get into that, because there's also a chapter where you talk about fail and failed. So we'll get into that. I'm telling you, Bishop, this book is juicy, man. You are giving us some things to think about. You're giving us some things to think about. And I'm a young pastor. So with me being a young pastor, how soon should I be looking for my replacement?
Wow, that's a great question.
I'm young
I
in
tell
age
people,
and young in pastoralship. So how
right.
soon?
So if you do it from a church standpoint or from a business standpoint, I believe a person should have a succession plan from day one. Now, with that being said, it doesn't mean that it's in stone and it does not change. You said something very important. Every year, I think just the way we perhaps get annual checkups, the way we should review our estate plan annually because situations change. I think it's important that as one of the things when you start a church to have a plan or process in place. Now, the person who may ultimately become the pastor may not even be born yet. They might still be
Wow.
running the streets, they may be behind bars who ultimately, but to have a plan in place that says, okay, for a church that's getting started, hey, maybe we're going to fold and merge with another church.
Yeah.
It could be we want you to have some type of audition process, if lack of a term. We're going to invite in some people because you don't have any ministers in-house. We're going to invite in some people to come in, and this committee is going to kind of facilitate the process and maybe let the congregation decide. There might be someone who would love to come and take over a church that has 25 members, just
Yeah.
to maybe avoid that initial birthing process. And we've
Yeah.
seen many success stories where someone's come in with 25, 50 members. Next thing you know, church has 500. It could
Right.
be that there is a person in place that helped you start. Maybe you started with your best friend as your assistant. Okay, maybe they would be, or a brother that could become the pastor. But I think, you should be working yourself out of a position from day one. And you should at least have some type of process in place from day one.
That's good. That's good. So that means you can't be insecure when you start.
Oh, no.
Ain't nothing personal, man. Get your feelings together.
Right.
Because it's about the posterity and the longevity of ministry, right? And I got a question for you that I'm gonna ask as we get more into it, because man, this thing is pretty heavy, Bishop. So I want to go to the next question, though. I want to go to the next question because, like I said, it's a lot of meat in this. Finding someone to catch the mantle. You talk about Elijah and Elisha. How important is it for the mentee protege to know or see the leader's scars?
Wow.
You write about this, Bishop. You put I told you, because
go back and read.
you know, Bishop, that's not something that people are allowing their proteges to see. It's almost like it's hidden until it can't be hidden anymore.
Right. I think if you're talking about true succession planning, a key component of the plan is the training of the protege or the pool of proteges. And part of the training is, I need you not only to see my successes, but you need to see my mistakes. What would I do differently? If I could go back in time, what would I tell the younger version of myself? You know, where did I blow it? Where did I mishandle a particular situation or crisis or a particular member? Teach me. I heard someone say we can learn from mentors and mistakes. And so rather than me learning from my mistakes, let me learn from my mentor. Teach me where you got it wrong. So hopefully I might make new mistakes.
Right.
But don't let me make the same ones you made, because you didn't tell me how to avoid those things.
Yeah. That's good, Bishop. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I am talking to Bishop Travell Travis. Bishop Travell Travis, guys, and we are talking about his book, Where is the Mantle? Where is the Mantle? We're getting in this. This is the biblical and legal guide to succession planning. For those who are joining late, this is the biblical and the legal guide to succession planning. So, Bishop, my next question I want to go to tonight, and say in that same vein, right? Because you know we're talking about mantles, and you know it's interesting because some of these things, Bishop, they become like popular words, right? They become pop. You know, the mantle, Doc, the mantle, right? So let me ask you this question. I didn't send this one in because I didn't know, because I'm gonna test you with this one. You can, you know, exercise your Fifth Amendment. Because we're talking about succession planning, and we might deviate with this one a little bit. What happens? What happens? All right, because I believe you are spiritual. I believe you are saved. What happens if the mantle isn't meant to be carried? We're talking about succession planning, right? And we're there are, so how do we determine what should, let me ask you like this. How do we determine what should continue, and then what we should maybe let go with the leader? Like, how do we determine that?
So if I'm understanding your question, should there be some works that are not continued?
Yes, like churches close all the time for different reasons, right?
Right.
And a lot of people don't know about that. They don't know that.
Right.
I mean, in terms of the numbers, like the numbers are, you know, the numbers are very, very large. Right. You can research it on George Barner for those who are listening. How do we, you know, determine what should be picked up and what should be?
One of the things I say is the beauty of, if you take Elijah and Elisha, it wasn't an office. You take Moses and Joshua, it was the leadership of a nation. Okay, if you take David and Solomon, it was the leadership of a nation. When we talk about Elijah and Elisha, what are we transitioning? We're not transitioning you can say the office of a prophet, but really it was a transitioning of an anointing, a certain grace, a certain gift.
Yeah.
And so I believe that if you have imparted into sons and daughters and to those around you, someone should pick up your style, your essence, your charisma, your gift, your ministry style, even if it's not to continue your particular church. I think that anointing will manifest maybe in a different way, in a different place, but it shouldn't completely die. Even when you look at even Jesus ministry was different than the apostles.
Right.
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 So Jesus, he turned it over to them to actually go out and establish the church. So I think in terms of if you ask the question, in terms of mantles, in terms of should a church or ministry necessarily continue, I think that's one question. But if that person has labored, sweat, toil, preached, taught, prayed, laid hands, somebody should be carrying on that teaching and ministry after that person is gone. I'll take even in our local church, we have people from different ministries that have their leader passed on. But I can tell you, sometimes it's almost frustrating. I look at this church, I feel like I got 10 different pastors out here. because the people have come, but they come with that DNA of their leader. So they have not forgot that teaching. They have not forgot this is what our bishop taught, and this is how he did things, and this is how he cared for us, this is how he prayed for us. So are any of them pastoring? No. Are any of them necessarily preaching? No. But that impartation of their ministry still lives on in those people.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And part of the reason why I ask that is because I want people to be able to identify and know what to look for as it pertains to ministry continuing.
Okay.
As it pertains to ministry continuing, and like you said, picking up where the individual leader who's not either alive or not pastoring left off for the vision and for that particular ministry. If they put their blood, sweat, and tears and they've labored and they sold into and again had a vision that was beyond themselves,
right,
that ministry should not, and we probably should not see as many closures or closings as the numbers suggest. But things happen.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was thinking one of the things I observed. I agree. I think it's almost two different lanes. You have the lane of where you're right. Some churches should not close simply because no one was in place to keep it going. I think that is one question. But I've seen where perhaps one season was up or their era was up. But to me, the blessing is, even though that church may have folded, when I've seen the seed, sometimes we look at it as the sheep scattered, but sometimes it's not necessarily the sheep have scattered, it's the seed has scattered. Yeah. And so rather than all of that being in one place, those people that have really been fed by that person, nurtured by that person, imparted by that person, then they're now equipped to go maybe help 3 or 4 different other ministries. So that person's ministry lives on, not necessarily in a physical church location, but their ministry lives on because those people carry their DNA to those other places and then help those other places flourish. So sometimes we worry about the seed staying in one place, but sometimes I believe God does want the seed to spread so it can multiply and increase in other vineyards.
Oh man, that's amazing. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's good. I like that analogy, Bishop. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely gives another perspective. Definitely gives another perspective. And again, I wish people, if you get a chance, you can Google George Bonner, you can Google church statistics. They do a lot of church statistics, and you'll see how many churches close per year. Because
Right.
especially amongst the African American, it's like shock value.
Right.
But when you go to other ethnicities,
Right.
it happens all the time. Like
Right.
it closes down like a business closed down, and everyone pretty much chooses to join another ministry, as you just said, the seed spread,
Right.
and there's no loss. And I look at guys like John Maxwell, right? Like in his books, a lot of them he will reference that he pastored 2 churches.
Right.
Now he's not pastoring any church, right? Like, and so for us, that's not something we're used to.
Right. Right.
That's not something we're used to, because we'll talk about it in a minute. We die out.
Right. Absolutely.
Or we wait until we're incapacitated before we get a position. This guy pastored 2 churches.
Right.
Before he became one of the world's top speakers on leadership, right? Top authors on leadership. And so to know that, I think it's something that we should be more aware of, that this is not forever, or this doesn't have to be forever.
And I think even with that, one of the issues sometimes even with the leader has to make sure that they don't set themselves up to be a God for the people. So that when it's time now for
say
the
that
next
one more time, Bishop. Say that. Nope. We're not moving on, Bishop. Back up. One more time. Say that again.
That they don't set themselves up as a God for the people, so that they can't receive. God sends the next person, but they can't receive them because you still work. That's why even the scriptures said to Joshua, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now carry these people over this Jordan into the land of promise. And so sometimes people can't receive who is ordained to be next because the leader has set themselves up as irreplaceable. So you can't receive who God sent you because you still so we have to be careful that and I think this is also what happens in a lot of our churches. If our identity is solely wrapped up in pastoring, and we set ourselves up as we're the only one God speaks to, we're the only one that's preaching the truth, we're the only one that can pray for you. And I understand can't eat from every table, can't let everybody lay hands on you. But when you position yourself to be God, then it almost is impossible for a person to come in and carry the work behind you. So then what's going to happen? The work's going to fall because God is gone now.
Bishop, you know what? There's a quote. Oh my gosh, I can't remember who said it. But they talk about how we put so much of what we do in the name of God that we don't even realize that God is nowhere in it.
Right. So a lot of our churches, they didn't train somebody. Okay, that's one issue. Okay, you got sometimes distrust or whatever. They didn't train anybody. But we have to be careful that we don't have people believe that no one will ever walk in our footsteps. No one could ever fill our shoes. No one can ever sit in our seat, because you have set that successor up to fail.
Yeah, that's good. Oh man, Bishop, I'm loving this. I really appreciate you lending to this subject tonight. Because you're helping us to see how important it is to set these things up, regardless of how long you've been in ministry and regardless of the size of your ministry.
Right.
We should do everything with the spirit of excellence.
I think it's one thing you even think about where Paul said, one plant, one water, God give the increase.
Yeah.
We say that, but we often don't mean it or don't know how to accept it. Sometimes God calls us, we think it's just to a church, but God calls us to serve the kingdom. And sometimes in serving the kingdom may mean that I equip people who will then go to another church.
We got to pause. because you can't leave my church because I own you.
See
You can't leave
that's
my church because I married you. I married your children. I christened your children. You've been
right.
here all your life. You can't leave here.
Now, granted, loyalty is not the same as it used to be. Our grandparents worked the same job 40 years. They got the same refrigerator. They got the same oven. You know, my grandmother just passed, and all my life, I'm 43 years old. She's had the same refrigerator, same oven in that kitchen. You know, we now switch phones every year. You know, we trade out cars every year. We trade out sneakers every year.
Yeah.
You know, we trade spouses that. Yeah. So that whole upgrades and so there is something to be said about people just not being loyal anymore.
Right.
But at the same time, understand that sometimes there are certain people for certain seasons of life, and you're supposed to impart, but you're a servant of the kingdom. It goes back to the thing we said earlier. Are you trying to build the kingdom or an empire? And too many of us are into empire building rather than kingdom building.
Bishop, man, this conversation is on fire tonight. Too many people are trying to build an empire instead of the kingdom.
Absolutely.
I got you. Preparing the protege to prosper. You mentioned in the book that there are ways to give consistent and constructive feedback to mentees or potential proteges. What are a couple of ways you can give constructive feedback? I love the way you said constructive feedback, because I use constructive feedback because I think constructive and criticism are oxymorons. I think they cancel each other out. Like, you can't be constructive and criticism, right? So constructive feedback. I love it. Yeah. So how you can do that to mentees and potential proteges?
I think it's very important to give people opportunities.
Yeah.
Put them in, give them tasks, give them assignment, put them over in a committee, put them over a ministry, put them in charge of a service. See how they work, or send them even something as I need you to go pray for such and so. Yeah. See how they handle it. And if they mishandle it, perhaps educate them on how to do it better. And sometimes one of the ways maybe this is a protege, are they receptive to that constructive feedback? If I want to grow and I want to mature, when I write a paper and I send it to an editor and the editor sends it back to me with no markings, I'm offended because I feel like the editor did not do their job. You didn't read this thing. I know you found something to. So if you really want to be better, you want honest, candid feedback. And so I think that we have to allow people to try different things, give them a grace to perhaps fail, but also give them opportunity to learn from. Say, hey, you planned a good conference, but let me tell you what maybe you could do different.
Yeah.
And if they're receptive to it and they apply it, and the next time they do it again, they do better. But you have to give people, I guess the bottom line is, you have to give people opportunities to see how they're going to handle it. You don't want the person's first opportunity to be in leadership is after they're consecrated as pastor. We don't know what you're going to do.
Wait. How does that even happen? Hey, Bishop, you know what? I'm gonna give you an example when we get off here. I'm gonna give you, because you think you laughing now. I'm about to give you an example. You're gonna go, what? Like, Moody, that don't make sense. Like, I just don't get some of these things. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know how people are moving these days, and some things are just not making sense. How can you be a pastor and you've never led anyone? You've never gotten that experience.
Right.
How to deal with personalities, because that's kind of what you're dealing with, right? You're dealing with personalities. You're dealing with people who have come from different paths.
Right.
You have people who have different temperaments. People who are great at being number twos, and people who are great working by themselves.
Right.
And to not get that experience until you become pastor.
Right. So if I've given you those opportunities to plan a conference, plan a service, you're over the men's ministry, you're over the women's ministry, you're over the youth ministry, you're over the evangelism and outreach ministry, you're over the marriage ministry. No initiative, no creativity, no reliability. You're horrible with managing people. You're horrible with managing the budget. You don't get along with people, no people skills, no emotional intelligence. Like, you're sloppy, unorganized. Now, not everybody has the same skill set. People have strengths and weaknesses. But if every time I've given you an opportunity to kind of show what you're capable of, and you don't step into that opportunity, maybe that's an indication that either you're not mature, or you're not ready, or you're not the one.
Whoa. Yeah, that's good. That's real. That's real. You mentioned earlier about a person being able to receive the constructive feedback. One of the questions is, how do you know if your members know and embrace the vision of the house? How do you know if your members know the vision and embrace the vision of the house?
You'd be surprised how many people have never shared what God has shared with them. So they're upset that people aren't following it, but you never shared it. You may have mentioned it indirectly in a sermon here and there, but when have you actually said, okay, this is where this is where we are. This is where I believe God wants to take us, and here are the steps that I think are needed to help get us there. And here's where your help is needed to make this happen. Or even, what do you think about it? Not that you're going to override what God says, but to get the input of the people, so that it's not just your vision, but it's our vision, and we're all moving in the same direction. Oftentimes, that's as simple as it sounds. Oftentimes, it's never communicated. It's not communicated orally. It's not communicated in writing. It's not communicated in a picture. I mean, you can communicate a vision by even sometimes having a picture of what. I even asked our leaders in our church, I said, I had a meeting with our men and youth and women's ministry, and I said, what does success look like as a men's ministry? What does success look like what does it mean to have a successful Friday? How do you know you've done a good job, even in your particular areas? And so I think it is important for us as leaders to have those conversations, because sometimes people just don't know what's on your heart and what God is telling you. And you die with it, and then you upset because they go in a different direction, but they never knew what direction we were supposed to be going in the first place.
That's good. That's good. One of your chapters is called Mantles That Fail, FELL, and Failed, FAILED. And in one of your sub topics, actually, it's the review questions at the end of the chapter. You ask, how can leaders avoid being blinded and misguided by pride? How can leaders avoid being blinded and misguided by pride? And I believe in that one of the examples you give with the successor or the non-successor of Joshua.
I think it's important to have accountability. You a pastor, you still need a pastor. You no matter, even if they're equals or counterparts, you need somebody in your life that can tell you about yourself.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, once again, going back to that king mentality, God mentality, you're above correction, you're above feedback. And so I think it is important. We'll make, if we're not careful, if we don't make ourselves God, will definitely make our ministries an idol.
Woo! Hold on. If you're not careful, you can make yourselves God or your ministries an idol. Okay. I just want to make sure I had it.
And so, you know, it is a test. It is a test. And I would even be personal with this. In Way of the Cross, we have an age limit, but it's I'm not even gonna say how old it is. I'm not at the age limit. We don't have term limits. We have terms. We have elections every 2 years. I was the youngest elected, and when I left, I served the second longest. That was part of me that if I stayed, I could have broke the record. If I could have, if assuming people voted for me, and that was a part of me who said, okay, I'm going for this record. I'm going to stay there the longest. My name is going to be remembered because I served the longest. But what God began to deal with me about is, can you walk away from it? I didn't want to. I loved youth so much. The worst thing that could happen was for me to stay too long and end up being the biggest cause of hurt or damage or lack of a better word, retardation.
Woo!
Because I was more worried about my platform, my influence, me breaking a record than the youth organization going forward. God forbid I end up being the biggest impediment to progress to the organization that I spent most of my life working and serving for.
You're helping me because I think we both left out of office the same year, 2018. I think, was yours 2018 or 17?
Wait a minute. What year is this? This 21, 19,
21.
2 years. Yeah.
So all right. So you were finishing up
2 years ago, 19. I came out in 19.
Okay, so you came out right like a few months after I came out, and I think we were talking about that process down in Northern Virginia. We were talking about what it is, and I was sharing that I was extremely excited about the new leader that was coming in. Shout out to my younger bro, not my little bro, because he's doing great things. Elder Darrell Brown Jr. Who we thought it was necessary to put a new team together and me not stay in another 4 years after being asked by the presider. And having a conversation, and I'm just like, Apostle, I would do a great disservice to our organization if I stayed in. And allow me to put a team together for us to vet some people and present to you a strong team that could really take the young people, the young adults to another level, and so far it has worked out so well. I'm happy. The organization is doing well. I'm home. I'm enjoying myself for the first time in 2019. For the first time since 2000. For the first time since 2000 or 1999, I was able to go in church and enjoy the service without having to be anywhere.
I understand.
So 20 years.
See, I'm similar. So I started out when I was 13, team vice, team president, second vice president. So when I left at 41, I had served 27 years total. I had given my life. So
you legit have given your life. Absolutely.
And to say, all right, it's time to move on when arguably I could keep. So that was the challenge. When do you walk away from something you've done your whole life? I felt like I compared it to these athletes.
Yeah.
When do you hang up the cleats?
Yeah.
Do you want to be one of these guys that leave while you're still kind of in your prime and people still want you and people still like you and people want you to stay? Or do you wait and keep going to where they had to cart you off? How Michael Jordan came back and played for the Wizards. People don't even remember.
Right, like this the Mike you talking about?
Right.
I know you're not talking about this Mike. I know you're not talking about this the MJ that That's the best in the world, the best all time, right?
Those 2
Not the
years not
Wizards,
even on the
MJ.
record. You don't even see highlights of the Wizards uniform. And so, do you stay into where people are glad you're gone? You know, do you stay to where you're now the holdup and the hindrance? And so, one of the things that blessed us was, one, I had to find my identity. Like, okay, well, who am I once I'm out of this? Because this is all I know and all I've done.
Wow.
If you're not careful, your identity will become wrapped up in what, you know, what you do and who you are, not two different things. And if you're not careful, you'll think that your whole identity is in this position. And I think it's similar with a pastor. If you've been pastoring 20, 30, 40 years, you're like, well, who am I when I'm not a pastor?
That's why some can't leave the pulpit.
There you go.
Because they don't have nothing else happening in their life. Like, for them to sit home with their family, they're uncomfortable.
Right. Absolutely. And so one of the blessings that happened with us, when I left, we had the youngest team to come in that we've had in a number of years. But the most historic event, we had more women elected than we had ever had before. And what's even more ironic, my wife, thinking we was going to ride up in the sunset together, she gets elected. So my wife is now the highest ranking woman in the youth department. She's second vice, so she's the highest ranking woman in the history, other than the founder, which was Mother Ford, which is the founder. So there was a legacy of a younger team. There's a legacy of 3 of the 6 positions are now held by females. And then when we also put young adults, intermediate, junior youth. If you look at that, you got a team that's at different generations, both boys and girls. And so now with the pandemic, I thank God that it was a different team that had to navigate it.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
But to bring that back to the pastoring, I going back to the issue of pride, I think pride creeps in when you think you're the only one that can do the job.
Yeah.
And too many times, and that's not just in youth leadership, and they may not do it exactly like you, but to think that you're the only one that can do this job, that this organization can't survive without me. Let me put it this way, whether it's in sports, whether it's in business, whether it's on your job, you got a job, you die, they'll find your replacement by the end of the week. And the company will keep going without you. And so too often in the church, we feel like we're the only one that can do this. The only one.
Wow.
Only one.
Wow.
And God will prove you wrong. God will show you that I'll bring some. And I think that's why you have a Moses. There was a reason why Moses didn't cross into Jordan. Leave some for Joshua. David, okay, you can get all the stuff together, but we're going to let Solomon build the temple.
Yeah.
Okay. Jesus,
good.
You trained the disciples, but we're going to leave them to actually establish the church.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Bishop, I probably won't be laughing for the next few minutes. I'm going to try to be very serious because we're, as my pastor would say, we're moving to an important part of the service. I need us all to focus, right? But these next few questions, man, I just to give a highlight, ladies and gentlemen, we are on tonight with Bishop Travell Travis, and we are talking about his latest book, Where Will the Mantle Fall? You can get it on wherever you buy books, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Kindle, wherever you buy books, you can get Where Will the Mantle Fall? And we're having this discussion tonight about a biblical and legal guide to succession planning. A biblical and legal guide to succession planning. For those who are just joining, make sure you subscribe, you like and share, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. Make sure you share this conversation, especially with the leaders of your ministry, with your pastor. If your pastor's not on Facebook, that's why we got YouTube. You can check it out at CCCOFNJ, OFNJ. And again, make sure you like, subscribe, and share. So, Bishop, as we move into this part of the conversation, we're going to get into estate planning.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to get into disability. Um, why is estate planning important for the pastor's family, as well as the ministry?
It's important for all of us, in the sense that too much wealth is being lost, especially in the Black community, because we don't have a plan. If you don't put certain things in place, I deal with my law practice. I get calls where, you know, even though some of our grandparents, great grandparents were poor in today's terms, they were land rich. I mean, they had farms, whether because the great slave owner and had a mixed kid and left them, or, you know, they had this farmland and they didn't have a will, and then the kids get it, and then the kids start die out, then the grandkids get it. The grandkids don't even know each other. No one's paying taxes on the property. Next thing you know, the government has taken the property and now has sold it to some developer that's built all these houses or a shopping center, making millions off of your land that you didn't properly handle with an estate plan.
Yes.
So I think it's important that we do make sure that we set our spouses up, our children up to succeed. And I think too often times we don't take initiative to put our ducks in a row.
Yeah, that's good. Tell me what you think about this, right? So you have a leader that's alive, but they're disabled. Someone is temporarily in that place and they want to move. They know they have to move, but the leader is still alive and they don't want to come off disrespectful, or they feel guilty that the leader is still alive, and there hasn't been a legal transition per se, whether it's, you know, if they're a part of an organization or a fellowship coming in and public transition. Can you speak to that a little bit, to that person who's in that position? They're leading, they have vision, and they can take the ministry to the next level, but they feel they're holding back because the leader is still alive and they don't want to come off disrespectful. If they're successful while the leader is, you know, incapacitated, basically.
That is a complicated question, and that's a very good question. I think it depends on, you know, when we're talking about the disability, why is the person still, you know, serving? Is it, you know, we're talking about dementia, we're talking about Alzheimer's, you know, we're just talking about old age. Is the person retaining the pastorate because they just want to be in charge, or because they have not prepared financially to retire?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like, I'm staying the pastor because I need the salary, or I feel like I'm entitled to the salary because I work so hard, and, you know, the church is not able to pay me. I should get this money and not the next person. So I think sometimes we have to figure out. I think the next thing churches need to consider in their succession plan or in their bylaws is maybe having a provision that deals with the possibility of permanent disability or incapacity. Okay. You know, you may have a short-term disability, the person may be sick, they can have surgery, but God willing, they can recover, they will get back and keep going. But what happens when a person can no longer function, and it's pretty much, unless God intervenes, this is a permanent situation? Is there a procedure that says, okay, this person has been disabled for a year, the disability is permanent, it's not going to be reversed. The church now can move to remove that person because pretty much they, and give them past their emeritus status, you know, perhaps work it out where the church can pay both salaries. But I think that's one issue. Now, to the flip side, when you're talking about the person who is the successor, arguably has the anointing, has the grace, has the vision, is frustrated because they know what God is leading them to do and they're waiting for their time, but the person's in the way. Unless God tells you to leave,
Yeah.
the Lord wants you to stay. Now, you're
Good
talking
point.
about the leader. You're talking about the members, or you're talking about the leader, the
Leader.
successor. The successor. I
The
think the
successor.
successor,
Yeah. The
the
successor.
successor has to stay. The successor has to stay unless God really, because see, now you make me double think, Mom.
No, man, because again, we're talking about proper succession planning, and I think that part of staying in too long goes back to what we shared a little earlier, what you shared a little earlier, about that pride piece, and
Right,
then about different scenarios as to why one may want to stay in, but again, you can't serve, and you did not set things up properly.
right, right,
It's a strain, and the church has potential, the
right.
successor has potential. um do we now come back, sit down, and negotiate?
And see that's the thing. You hit it right in the sense that, okay, everybody knows this person's next. Do we wait till the church is dead before we turn it over to them, and now this person has to basically start from scratch to rebuild this thing? Where
Yeah,
maybe if you've given it to them 2, 3, 5 years earlier,
yeah,
before things really took a left turn, this person
yeah,
could have sustained it and took it to the next level. And you're right, there are too many situations where too many instances where we've seen that happen. We
yeah,
know that the person is not where they used to be. They know it. They know who's next. The person who's next knows they're next. The whole congregation is sitting there saying, will you please turn the mantle over before the whole church just scatters? Because, even if the successor is loyal, the people are not going to just sit there and die and
correct.
wilt away because they're not being fed. People go find another church at some point, and if they get to
Yeah,
go into another church, they fall in love with another church. Even when that person comes in to be the successor, if they've now established somewhere else, do they even come back home? And it's
yeah,
all because now you done waited too long to pass that mantle. That does happen too often. But I've
yeah,
also seen where people who have stayed and waited, and when the time came, God did give them that grace to do what was necessary. Um, wow, that's a difficult question, Moody. That's a difficult question. Difficult
wow,
question.
man, it's I mean, because it's almost like that part, while difficult, you wonder, like, can it be worked out? Because
Right,
you hear of these fallouts, and I think also in your book, in one of the chapters, I believe it's about the chapter with the estate planning.
right,
In the sub is like, you watch these people build this ministry only to
right,
fall out
right,
when
right,
someone dies.
right, right,
So
right.
you built this, it's strong, it's thriving, and but you forgot to call the lawyer in and create this will, this living will, or this plan for when go off the scene. Even Jesus had a plan,
Right.
when he was leaving the scene.
But some I've looked at even with that. When do you transfer the mantle? If you take Moses and Joshua, Elijah and Elisha, David and Solomon, they were on their way out. I mean, Moses. I mean, and even talking about waiting, man. Josh, you 80, Moses 120. When am I gonna finally get my turn? Now we know they had extended life, but like if this thing is supposed to happen, look at how long Joshua had to wait for Moses to finally, and it wasn't until it's like, all right, you're not gonna cross over. Moses then says, okay, well, if I'm not gonna cross over, who's gonna lead these people? Go and consecrate Joshua to be the leader. If you take David, David was on his deathbed. His son has already had his coronation, Bathsheba and Nathan have to come in and say, yo, David, I thought you said Solomon was supposed to get this. Okay, all right, let's go do it. Give him my seat, and let's call for the priest, and let's do this thing right. So it does happen sometimes where a person does wait almost to when it's too late. And I think you have to have a certain level of grace for that leader, that if it is, as you mentioned, life's work, blood, sweat, tears, sacrifice.
Yeah.
It's not easy, whether it's in the church or in the secular world, it's not easy to walk away from your life's work and to turn it over to somebody else. If we say it's pride, and I do think it's a level of pride, but just being realistic, it's hard to walk away from something you have spent your whole life doing and building.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think that's something that, we also have to consider.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when we're not in those shoes, it's easy for us to say, "Oh, just give it up."
Right.
So you talked about when to pass the mantle. Something that you talk about in your book that at first I thought it was blasphemous, right?
Probably a couple things in there, but okay.
Bishop, you talked about retiring. We grew up with them telling us you don't retire from this, right?
Right.
You they told us we can't retire. But it's interesting because I have friends. We're like late 30s, right? Early 40s, in our age range, right? And Cass is really talking about so they are in somewhere between 5 to 7 years, right? And they're like, bro, 55, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's a wrap.
20 years. Yeah.
They're like, I'm telling you now. They're like, don't be surprised.
Right.
I'm telling you now, I am done. So we definitely see things changing, things trending to actually now considering my time as pastor is up. And again, I think this is what the book is all about. Biblical and legal guides to succession. Part of the succession, based on the book, is also not just you giving up something, but you also setting things up so that you can give it up.
Right.
And you don't have to stay in.
That's the problem. Most of the people you find, that's the problem. They will pastor till they die because they need it as a source of income. Not because what God is leading them, not what they're physically able to do, not because they need the attention. Sometimes it's control. They want to be in control. But a lot of it comes down to, this is my sole income, or the church cannot provide 2 salaries. So therefore, I'm going to stay in this position until I ruin everything I've spent my lifetime building.
Wow. So how do we begin to change our minds on the retirement piece and move towards retirement biblically and legally?
So I think twofold. I think from a biblical standpoint, I think you're right. You never stop preaching.
Right.
You preach till the last breath come out of your body.
Yeah.
But can I say that there is a example of pastoring until you die? Now, we know kings served until they died. Are we saying a pastor is a king? So I believe that God can use you in different positions. If you're a bishop, you're free to travel to the churches in your council in your diocese to be an advisor. Especially if you're promoted to a higher office, why can't you now be free to go and serve the body at large or the kingdom at large, rather than being tied down, to a lot of the day-to-day operations, of a church? Be an evangelist, be a missionary, be a church planter, be a consultant. I would love if some of the older ones were free to just be able to travel and to impart to some of the younger ones, to consult and to mentor and to advise. So it's not to say that you don't have a role. It's almost liberate. I mean, in the natural, we look forward to retirement. But when it comes to the church, we almost see it as almost a shameful or disrespectful thing. I think it'd be great to be able to preach and not worry about a church anymore. To be able to just come here and say what I got to say and keep it moving, and you deal with the folk afterwards. Man, you know how liberating that is.
One person who I saw attempt to well, not so much attempt, actually did it, and it was kind of foreign to, I know, even our organization. I want to give a special shout out and pay homage to our former presider, Apostle Floyd Nelson Sr. So upon him moving up within the organization, he resigned as pastor and passed the mantle to my good brother, Bishop Floyd Jr.
Right.
So that he could give his time to the organization and lead, assist the presider at the time, as well as, help many of the local churches, because him and Mother Nelson was still birthing churches. They were still church planting as well, and he tried that model, and I thought it was a great idea, although it was not the traditional model that we were used to. We were used to our presiders having their own churches, which, can really take a toll when you're leading this international body as well as your local church,
So it's like, if God elevates you, let him elevate. You can't be governor and president at the same time.
Ooh, talk, Bishop.
I mean, in the natural, when you're a governor and you get elected president, don't you give up being governor?
Yeah.
So why is it, if God is elevating you to serve the body at large or the Reformation at large, why do you feel like you got to reach up and reach down? I got to hold both at the same time. If God is promoting you, why isn't he releasing you?
Great thought. And I think it's something for many that they may need to consider, just so that in the process both organisms and organizations can continue to grow. Like your local can remain thriving and vibrant, as well as you're able to give time, mentorship, leadership to the organization that you're presiding over. So I think that's a great idea that you did it, and I know he tried that before. He had well, not so much tried it, he did it. He was doing it, and he was working through the process of that.
And I think from a legal financial standpoint, we're at the age now, and somebody will say we're already too late, that we have to start saving for retirement, so that we have the option. And even when you start thinking about becoming a full-time pastor, whether bivocational pastor, one of the things that you have to consider in your compensation package isn't just salary, but benefits. It's one thing that the church can pay you a comparable salary, but are they going to give you health insurance, disability insurance? Are they giving you life insurance? Are they giving you retirement? So you walk away from that job where you got that pension and you're paying into Social Security and you got health insurance, and now you go full time. Yeah, you're free to devote to the ministry, but you get sick, you become permanently disabled, or you want the option to retire and you can't financially because you haven't put the money away to do it, nor has your church done it. So that has to be a conversation, not when you're 60. That's a conversation 20, 30, 40. So for me, I'm bivocational. So I work my secular job at Hampton University. If it gets to a point where my church is large enough to say, hey, pastor, we want you to become full-time. Not only do I have to look, can they somewhat meet my monthly income? I got to look to see, can you match my benefits?
Yeah.
Because too many pastors, they match the income, but they ain't matching the benefits. And when you don't match the benefits and something goes wrong, that's when everything goes haywire.
Don't be out here driving a $90,000 car and you don't have no health insurance.
There you go.
Or life insurance.
There you go. So we had a situation, you know, pastor had a stroke, fine in every sense of the word, except for his ability to speak. So it goes back to what you talk about. You're alive, mentally you're fine, physically you're fine, but you can't preach if you can't talk. So what do? You know, how long do we wait for a miracle? You know, and so at some point you have to make some of those decisions. And so it goes back to you. People all the time don't even understand how much medical costs are if you don't have insurance. I was sharing with my students.
That independent insurance, boy. That independent insurance.
Yes, even with Obamacare, Affordable Care Act, maybe a little bit more options than what you had before. You have a baby, it's $25,000. You can buy a car for the cost of a baby. I mean, simple procedures, simple hospital visits. And then, like you said, your employer, even a bad employer, is most likely paying 50%.
Yeah.
So you don't even know what it's like to pay 100% of your health insurance.
No,
and so
not at all.
That's a conversation that maybe more organizations can get in. We try to have those conversations, you know, as an organization. Can we have group health insurance?
Group health, yeah.
Life insurance.
Yeah.
Something
that would be good. And I mean, while we're there, health insurance, life insurance, let's talk about it. You know, churches taking policies out on their pastors. Like, what would you recommend in situations like that? Should it be something where the policy benefits the church, benefits the family, benefits both? I've heard of pastors having life insurance. If anything happens to them, a certain amount go to the church, a certain amount go to the family.
I would say this: as a man, it's my job to take care of my family. So I should have a life insurance policy as a man for my family. That's to take care of my wife and to take care of my children. It shouldn't be the church. It's good that they do, because my wife is the founding mother of the church. Even though she's young, she don't call herself that. Yeah. But I'm her husband. It's my job to make sure my wife and children are taken care of. So at my age, I have a policy that if something should happen to me, she will get my income until my children are grown. I pray that my children will get scholarships, but if not, their college education is taken care of. So yeah, that's good. Bills are paid off. She can move on with her life. She'll probably move back to Philly, start over, have a good life. You know, get a car, put my name on the license plate or something, and she going on. She'll be living good. I said she ain't gonna be crying, but so much. You know,
right?
She'll be good. She'll be good.
Hallelujah.
So I told the church, I said that if I come up missing and you can't find her, you also might know what's going on. She off somewhere in the Caribbean enjoying. But now, what I say for a church, where a church may come in, is a situation where, in a lot of cases, you know, maybe the church wants to pay for the pastor's funeral. Oh, my wife is watching. Okay.
That's how, yeah, stop.
So I done put it out there. If I come up missing, no more suspect. But a lot of times we talk about for a church, what happens is in a situation where maybe the spouse, especially older churches, where the wife didn't work. She's dependent on husband's income. Husband is deceased. Church can only afford one salary. That's for the new pastor. Right. What are you going to do with mother who birthed this church and she was dependent on husband's salary for her income, and the church can't afford two salaries? So the church takes a policy essentially to maybe pay, really probably three things. Maybe to pay for the former pastor's funeral. You owe that to your pastor. To also pay for maybe any outstanding debt to the church. Church still owes a mortgage. You might have some fluctuations in membership and income. So you want to make sure the church is straight. Jerry Falwell made sure his church was paid off and Liberty University was paid off. And then the third thing would be to give the church money to pay previous pastor's salary to surviving spouse, so that the church does not have to pay. Worry about, can we pay both spouses or pay both salaries? That's what. So as a man, I'm going to do what I need to do as a man. But as a church, take care of the church in that regard. Two separate policies.
There we go. That's good. That's good. I think that's good. And of course, as you mentioned earlier about the successor, that is something, you know, at the outset of starting a ministry, they should look into. The board should be looking into some type of life insurance or coverage for the leader.
Because the younger, the cheaper. I mean, the younger you are, the cheaper the insurance, and you can get, you know, a young man like yourself in your 30s, you know, probably $1 million policy, couple dollars a month. And so that becomes, even from a compensation package, you know, there are ways, even if you're bivocational, that a church can pay you without paying you. So, okay, fine. Okay, you're paying for the insurance policy. Okay, you're paying into retirement. Okay, these are some things that you can do is not going to be taxable necessarily to me, but it's going to benefit us down the road. So,
Yeah.
so hey, let's can you so right now you might, I don't know the size of your church, but if our church say, okay, they can't pay us out, but can y'all at least buy an insurance policy on me now so that the church will be straight whenever?
Yeah.
Okay, we can afford that. Okay, well, okay, we're making progress there. So,
Yeah.
so I agree. I think churches need to do that.
Bishop, that's good. So everyone, I pray that you are paying attention tonight and you are hearing this content and this information. We just got a few more minutes. One more question that we're going to ask the bishop before he goes, but we are talking to Bishop Travell Travis tonight, the author of Where Will the Mantle Fall? Biblical and Legal Guide to Succession Planning. And so we've already covered quite a bit tonight, and we are talking about life insurance policies. We are talking about retirement plans. I know you're young. I know, you know, you're thriving, and you know you're the hip hop preacher and you're cool. But I think over this last year we've seen a lot transpire that did not have a respect of age.
Absolutely.
That it did not have a respect of age. Churches have buried their leaders, and many of them were not ready financially,
right,
spiritually,
right.
In no way, shape, or form were they ready for their leader to go and leave them. But they found themselves in those situations. So we're talking about making sure that you are looking to set yourself up. If you haven't, if you're not, if you're, you know, planning to, Bishop, what are some companies that you would even suggest? All right. You cannot sue Bishop. These are just his opinions. But we want to tell you some of the streets he has driven down. All right. Because I think, you know, some people will get the information was like, well, he told me. No. We are putting the disclaimer out there tonight. These are just suggestions. These are his opinions. And he's a lawyer, so he knows how to say it and what to say, so you can't come back to him. But I just wanted to put the disclaimer out there verbally.
Well, I'll say this from an estate planning perspective, since a lot of it is on the state level, you can, you know, look up estate planning attorneys, people that specialize in doing wills, powers of attorneys, setting up a trust, living wills, you know, those end of life decisions. Do you want to be a artificial resuscitation? Do you want some artificial means keeping you alive? Do you want the plug pulled? And we're people of faith, and so sometimes it's hard to make those decisions. Or do we wait for God to perform a miracle, or do we go ahead and you know and pull the plug? Those once again, sometimes it's pillow talk conversations, but never documented as to what a person really wants end of life. So you probably want to contact some type of an estate planning attorney. In terms of your church bylaws, incorporation, there are some attorneys that do specialize in church law. There are some things I can do cross jurisdictional lines, but a lot of times there's probably somebody that specializes in church law in your area that can help make sure that your bylaws, your succession planning, the language of succession planning, dealing with the possibility of disability or incapacitation is properly documented in the bylaws. Now, in terms of your insurance, I always tell people, depends on what your goals are. Not everybody's goals are the same. Some people just want enough to bury them. Okay, that's fine. But make sure you have insurance, make sure your premiums are paid, and that you make sure you have enough to accomplish your goals. So arguably for me, the older I get and my kids get older, arguably the less I need, because we're not talking about my wife having to raise my kids by herself. Hey, they'll be grown to be on their own. So arguably a younger person may actually need more insurance than an older person.
That's good.
Because you talking about raising children without necessarily your income and a mortgage and college education. So I think those are important. So I didn't drop any names, but
no problem.
There's some good insurance. You got term life and whole life. There's some pros and cons to that. But I will say this: you asked me a question about Social Security, and I want to.
Oh yeah, I was gonna come back. I was like, we cannot.
Okay.
I was about to circle back to that one. I just looked at it. I said, yeah, we cannot. Should we, as pastors, especially those who are full-time, should we be paying into Social Security? Okay. What are your thoughts? What are your opinions? What are your professional
great
prognosis?
Question. And what happens is often misrepresented in terms of how it's presented to people. There is an exception for ministers to opt out of Social Security, but it's not merely just an option of, I don't want to pay Social Security. When you make a declaration to Social Security, you're saying, from a religious standpoint, I do not believe in government assistance. You swear an oath that says, according to my doctrine and belief, I do not believe in government assistance, which then means not only are you saying, I don't believe in Social Security, it also takes you out of Medicare. It also takes you out of, if you get disabled, Social Security not only pays disability, but also if you die, it can pay a benefit to your surviving spouse or children. And so if you opt out and you're saying, I don't believe in this, just realize what you're saying is, I am on my own in every sense of the word. And people think, oh man, I'm saving a couple dollars here and there each month. And then they hit 65 and they didn't take the money. Now, let me say this. If you opt out of Social Security, the key is to take that money and invest it. Not just to spend it, but invest it. The problem is when you invest it, your investment may only grow to where it gives you 5 years. What happens if you outgrow your investment? Social Security will pay you till you die. You don't outlive Social Security. You may outlive your investment. So you don't want to be in a situation where you need Medicare. You want to be in a situation where you're looking to retire or you get disabled, and because you made an oath that according to your religious beliefs, you don't believe the government should help you. Now you're looking for the government to help you. And the government says, well, you told us you ain't believe in it. You ain't paid into it. You're on your own.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So can you do it? Yes. But make sure you take that money and put it somewhere else. But just realize that probably the best investment, the best return on investment is not going to give you the length of time that you need. You live, you retire 65, you live at 85, 20 years. Is your savings on your own going to last 20 years? Social Security you don't run out of.
Wow, great point. Great point, which I'm sure many are not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Many are not aware of. So again, Bishop, thank you. Thank you tonight. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for sharing. You can contact him at the Law Office of Travell Travis, PLC, for your business, church law, and entrepreneurship needs.
Thank you.
Guys, he is legit. He is legit. He's a pastor. He's a husband. He's a lawyer. He's a teacher. He's a community advocate. He's just an amazing all-around guy. And do me a favor tonight, not just share this conversation, because these are just highlights. I want you to go out and I want you to buy the book, Where Will the Mantle Fall? Where Will the Mantle Fall? Also get Don't Eat the Baby. The characteristics of a cannibalistic. Listen, this is some great content and some great material that I believe we all should have. Those who are in ministry, those who are in business. Times are changing. You have to have more than one stream of income. You have to protect yourself, and that's where some of the insurances come in. I know it sounds pretty expensive, but trust me, if something was to happen to you, it would be more expensive. Right. We have to get into preventive maintenance. We might have to sacrifice a couple of haircuts, a couple of nail appointments to pay monthly premiums to make sure that if anything happened to us, that our families will be well, the ministry can continue, and things, we show that we've taken care of business. So, Bishop, before we leave, what is one last thing you want to share with our audience for tonight?
Wow, Pastor Moody, I'm so honored. And once again, you shared this platform for me to share and to just go through this book. I honor you. I thank God for your friendship. And, we got our wounds from being youth president, and we share that bond. And I'm appreciative that now in post-presidency, we can come on this platform and just, share and to do. And you did a great job at Pastor Knight's presentation. I was watching you virtually.
So, thank you. I appreciate it.
For you for that. But I think that the key to it is start having the conversations. It's never too early to start having the conversations, but then let's go beyond conversations into documentation and understand that things can be worded. And this is the biggest fear most have. If I put something in place, can I change it? And almost anything you put in place can be changed up until the point of death or incapacity. Your will can be changed up until the time you die. Your succession plan, you can put a framework in place for now. And as the church grows, as the church evolves, as people get saved, as people leave, you can tweak it and revise it over time. Your insurance policy, you can get one now. You can add to it. You can take away from it. Your trust, your purchasing of funeral arrangements, training people. It's never too early to get started. And I think, as you said, with this COVID-19, the one thing that we've all learned, that tomorrow is not promised. We've seen too many GoFundMe funerals. We've seen too many situations where, churches have closed because no plan was in place, or this person heard him say he wanted this person said he wanted that, but nothing was in writing. What happens when it's a he said, she said? I got this picture behind me. It's a reminder. You got LA on, you Lakers?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mama mentality. We all saw in 2020, Kobe Bryant. Black Mamba, Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman. People in their prime, people still young. Kobe Bryant and I are the same age. So I got this poster to remind me that tomorrow is not promised, that I have to take advantage of every day that God gives me, because when I look at, hey, I'm in overtime compared to where his life was cut short. And so you realize that, you think you're going to give 60, 70, 80, 90, and I pray that God gives me long life, health, and strength. But that doesn't negate my responsibility to take actions to take care of my family, my ministry now.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you. Thank you again for this very important conversation. Bishop, we definitely going to have you back, because I think there's some stuff in Don't Eat the Baby that we must also have a conversation because the dynamics of ministry are changing.
Right.
Mark Moore says it was in person with the option of online.
Right.
Post-pandemic, will probably be or will be online with the option of in person.
Right. Right.
So with things changing, I think there are some things, and don't eat the baby, that we're gonna need to, share and have a conversation with, because we're still going to work with people in ministry,
Right.
and we have to see how the different characteristics are experienced in those ministries, and what we can do to have healthy, thriving ministries versus ministries that are unhealthy and that are not good and that are cannibalistic. So again, man, I'm excited. Again, thank you again for sharing with us tonight. Thank you for your wife for joining in. Appreciate you. And to everyone tonight, thank you for joining in. Please like, subscribe, and share. Again, those of you who are on YouTube, share this conversation with your pastor, with your leadership, and reach out. Bishop, I have your contact law office of Travell Travis. But what's the email address or website that we could have?
If you do all of it, my name, Travell Travis. That's my website, TravellTravis.com. Email TravellTravis@gmail.com. And then Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just do Travell. Everything's Travell Travis. And then phone number, area code 757-528-8529. So you can contact me on all the social media platforms, website, telephone, email, pretty much all the same. And with the university, end of the semester, we're in exams. Graduation is Sunday. So my summer is really when I focus on a lot of the other stuff. So if people need help, this is the season.
Definitely.
From May to September, this is my peak season to be available to help. And even with virtual, I've been able to do things on conference calls and Zoom. So even if it's a church out of state, we can get on a Zoom or a conference call, have the conversation. And even if it's something I can't do in your state, having the conversation, I maybe can point you in the right direction. So just let me know. We're available to serve. We're honored to serve. I went to law school to help churches. The reason I went to law school was to help churches. So to have this opportunity now to finally kind of walk in that area, I'm grateful. And so anything I can do to help the body of Christ, we're happy to serve.
Excellent. Again, thank you so much tonight, everyone. Have a blessed night. God bless you all. And let's continue to pray for Bishop Travell Travis and the ministry and his family. And Bishop, I want to just say publicly, may God bless everything that he's called you to do. May he strengthen your hands. May it prosper. May you leave a wealthy legacy for your family. And you guys continue to impact in the area, in the region that God has called you to, but also even greater for you personally, as this book is going to help people around the world. So greatly appreciate you for your time tonight. God bless everybody.
Thank you.